Welcome to this week's edition of Impactful Teamwork. And my name's Julia Felton. I'm going to be your host and guide as we go through the next 20 minutes or so. And today I wanted to revert to a subject that we haven't spoken about for a long time. And it's one I'm super passionate about. And this is about what we can learn from nature to improve business and leadership. And I was reviewing the recent episodes. I was like, oh my gosh, we haven't spoken about nature for so long. And I know that's a topic that really resonates with a number of you. So I wanted to make sure that we delved back into this subject. And I was inspired to do this because somebody that I really follow is a lady called Dr. Kathy Allen, and she's written an amazing book called Leading from the Roots, which is all about what we can learn from nature. Because I think we can all agree that in leadership and organizational development, a paradigm shift is emerging. And it's one where we're moving away from viewing organizations as mechanical entities towards recognizing them as living systems. It's this systemic approach to looking at business. And I believe that this transformation is crucial in the 21st century because we know we live in a world that is very uncertain, but also it is very disruptive and it's very multifaceted. And there's so much interconnectivity happening that we can't just look at everything through a single lens. We've got to really look at it in this way of how one area impacts another. So I believe that nature provides us a great blueprint on how to lead our businesses. And if you're not familiar with my book, Unbridled Business, Unlocking Nature's Wisdom to Reinvent Leadership, I would really signpost you to that, because that's a book that I wrote that I was inspired to write because of the way that I saw that businesses were no longer fit for purpose. We needed a new model, and I believe that new model existed in nature. And I think what's interesting in nature is that nature is very dynamic, but it embraces the unpredictability that's going on in there. And nature also has patterns of coherence. And it's in these larger patterns and cycles that we can really help create a blueprint for how we can work together. So what does that mean? Natural systems are dynamic, they're filled with energy, they're capable of self-organization and evolution. So as leaders, we really want to understand that we can shift our approach from exerting control to unleashing potential. And how do we do this? The key lies in recognizing and harnessing the inherent energy and creativity within the organization. And when we adopt this kind of living system mindset, this encourages us to ask different questions. And as leaders, it is really important that we have a healthy curiosity about what is going on. And when we've got a healthy curiosity, then we ask different questions. And that's why healthy curiosity is one of the main pillars of the Unbridled Teamship Roadmap. So when we adopt this living system mindset, or as leaders, we stop seeking control and we really focus on how can we identify and unleash the hidden talents and energies within our teams and organizations. And what does that result in? That results in more engagement, innovation, and a much more productive environment. And what that means is when we start thinking about a business as a living system, we really start to change our relationship with it. It requires us to focus on the interconnectivity within the business, the mutual dependence, and the quality of relationships both in and outside the organization. And so we start designing organizations to support life and contribute positively to future generations. And that leads to a more sustainable and ethical business practices, aligned with the broader goals and societal environmental well-being. Because a living system mindset is all about co-creation and collaboration, as we learn to leverage the collective strengths and dynamics within the group. So when we start looking at nature as a model for leadership, it becomes really clear that nature thrives on dynamic, transformative energy. And just as nature sustains and regenerates itself through energy flows, organizations and businesses must harness and optimize their internal energy to evolve. So let's just talk about energy. Energy is a topic that I'm really fascinated with within business, because I think it's something that we don't talk about a lot. And when we're looking to harness the energy of our people, that's what unleashes this superpower of teamwork. So energy is the foundation of effective leadership. And when we can harness and direct our energy and that of our people, we can create momentum, inspire action, and sustain growth. And we only just have to look at some powerful lessons that exist in nature. For example, the ocean. The ocean teaches us about adaptability and rhythm. The waves build strength, crest, and recede. And they remind us to honor the cycles of effort and rest. And if I'd like to signpost you to a podcast edition we did just before Christmas, when we were all talking about how we need to rest and restore in the winter months. So when we understand our businesses as a living system that is dynamic and continually evolving and filled with energy, the role then of a leader becomes that of how do we manage and use this energy to its best advantage. And I think as leaders, the right strategy is helping our team members transform the energy that exists within the organization so that we can better adapt and respond to the external environment. And the energy within the organization speeds up and adapts when we make information and feedback available to every team member and articulate why the adaptation is necessary for the organization and its team members. So this goes back to the topic of what's in it for me. And this is the conversation I was having with one of my clients the other day. They wanted to implement change into the organization, but there was a danger that they were forcing the change on people. Now, nobody wants that. And this is why over 70% of change initiatives fail. And I explained and talked with this leader about how we needed to think about, for his team members, what's in it for them. Why do we want to put the change in? What are the benefits to them? How's that going to improve their working day, their levels of productivity, their efficiency at work? And I think when team members understand why we need to adapt and change and how they can contribute to that, they're way more likely to buy in. Because we've got to remember that every day our team members are choosing how they want to show up at work. Now, some of them consciously and some of them unconsciously. Because if we've spoken about before, we have this ripple effect that we leave behind us. There's a blog post I've actually done about the leadership wake, which is the level of energy we leave behind us. Just like a boat, when a motorboat is going across the ocean, or even a sailing ship, it leaves a wake behind it, the levels of the waves where we disrupt the pattern. And this is actually what happens in life. This is what we're doing as humans. We leave this wake of energy behind us, and it can either be positive or negative. And of course, when we leave positive energy behind us, it brings our teammates along with us. It encourages cooperation, creativity, productivity, and active support and collaboration. Whereas negative energy makes everything more challenging and drains that positive energy. And what we're seeing is a lot of leaders really not tapping in and optimizing this human energy within the organization. That's why at Business Horsepower, we're passionate about helping you harness the energy of your people to get optimal results. Because we want to help you unleash that positive energy in the workplace. And I just want to think about the process of photosynthesis in nature, because we know that nature runs on sunlight. And this is like a free resource. It's a life-giving resource. It's a bit like the energy within our team members. But we have to partner sunlight with leaves and grass and algae in order to synthesize that energy and transform it into the nutrients that animals and plants need. So the sun's rays become more than what they are initially because they get paired with photosynthesis. And the more authentic and reciprocal the relationship, the more the positive energy is released. And we also see positive energy being released when people connect to this larger shared purpose. And again, this is something we've spoken about on the podcast, is the power of how do we get all our team aligned and pulling in the same direction? And that is about purpose. When everyone starts pulling together because they know where they're heading and what we want to achieve. So Dr. Kathy Allen talks about organizational photosynthesis, which is a process that elicits positive instead of negative or neutral energy. And she asked leaders 2 key questions to help them understand the energy within their organization. And I wanted to share these with you. These 2 questions are what drain your energy at work and what generates positive energy at work. And of course, these answers are unique to each and every one of us, but the patterns are quite similar. Because generally, as we might assume, positive energy is generated when people feel their work is meaningful and serves a higher purpose. And when strong beneficial relationships exist with their co-workers and partners. And also strong positive energy exists when people find the work slightly challenging and it solves a problem and they feel important. If we go back to getting into a flow state, we need a certain amount of challenge in order to get us into that flow state, that state of optimal work. And of course, conversely, conflict and tension between team members reduce positive energy. Repetitive, meaningless tasks drain energy. And when team members aren't acknowledged by their boss or even ignored, they don't feel a sense of belonging to the organization. And there was a statistic I shared on a previous podcast. I think if I remember correctly, it was something like 40% of people would rather be acknowledged by their boss and given some negative feedback than to be ignored at all. So this is our need for belonging. So what does it mean? It means that there's a direct correlation between the quality of energy within the organization and its overall health. And when we can create strong energy through organizational photosynthesis, then we can get success. And I'd like you to think about this as a triad. There's 3 dimensions that help create this strong energy within the organization. And they are authentic relationships, reciprocity, and a shared higher purpose. So authentic relationships are created when we bring our true self to work, and that creates the foundation for positive energy exchange. So what does that mean? It means that we need to reveal the heart. It means that we don't want to hide our feelings and thoughts because we need those if we are going to create authentic relationships. And reveal the heart was one of the topics that we were talking about on our May 20-minute teamship teaching. These are teachings that we deliver every single month. They're just 20 minutes, usually in the first week of the month, that just give you something to boost your energy with and something to focus on for that month. And so authenticity is a really key pillar of that. Reciprocity is characterized by equity and respect. And this thrives on horizontal relationships and nourishes positive energy dynamics. And what we see is somebody who operates with a kind of power over us diminishes our reciprocity and authenticity. So rather than power over, we want to work power with our team, to collaborate with them. And then a shared higher purpose transcends conventional missions and drives team members to find meaning and connection in their work. And this higher purpose extends beyond the boundaries of the organization and influences the organization, the community, and the planet. And I was really fortunate when I was at the Reinvention Summit the week before last in Dublin that we heard from the chairman of Patagonia. And there is a company that is really driven by a higher purpose. Everything they do, they talked about not being sustainable, but responsible. They feel they have a responsibility for the planet and they want to do everything within their power to ensure they leave a minimal footprint behind so that the earth is not impacted by what they do in any type of negative way. And it was so interesting listening to this chairman about how he was talking about how values absolutely drive everything within Patagonia. So how do we create this positive energy within our organizations? Of course, the irony is we actually create positive energy by letting go of things. What are the things we need to stop doing? Because nature initiates and sustains and then releases what no longer fits form to function. So nature learns to let go of things. The trees let go of the leaves in the autumn. So when nature lets go, it frees up energy and resources to reorganize and explore the next adaptation of life. And it's a constant cycle that allows nature to reorganize itself and the larger system to support future life. But the problem is in organizations, we tend to hold on to old ways of thinking and acting. And at some point, these conventional ideas are no longer fit for the organizational world we live in. And this is why we need to embrace reinvention. Because nature would release the practices as soon as they were no longer fit for purpose. But as I said, in the human world, we tend to hold on to what's worked in the past is going to work in the future. And we've seen a number of companies that have done that in the past, and it has resulted in their demise. They haven't been able to let things go and reinvent in order to thrive in the future. And when we do let things go, we create more positive energy. And we actually thrive in the longer term. And of course, the conundrum here for many business leaders is that we have to give up things like prioritizing short-term profits over longer-term sustainable goals. And Patagonia is such a great example of a company that's done that. But of course, the challenge is that we are still living in a society where many companies are measured on the stock exchange every 90 days. And this actually stops us looking at the longer picture. Nature is always looking at the larger picture that's out there and what's happening and playing to the longer game, the game to survive and thrive. And when we look at the horse herds, we've talked about this before, horse herds have existed for 55 million years. And you only have to look at the evolution of the horses from really tiny and how they've adapted and changed through the many years. They've continually reinvented themselves to adapt to the situation around them. So my invitation to you and what we can learn from nature is how can we let go of old ideas and habits and reorganize our thinking so that we design, lead, and manage our organizations to regenerate, because the regeneration adds vitality and resilience, and that benefits the whole and not just our own organization. So we've covered a lot there today, but I think that really, if I was to sum this up in a couple of sentences, it's this. Nature understands the power of energy. It understands that sometimes you need to let energy go and sometimes you need to harness energy. So my invitation to you this week is, how can you harness the energy of your people and create this really positive energy vibe in your organization so that your organization continue to grow and thrive? And against that background, what do you need to release and let go of so that you provide the space that your organization can reinvent and regenerate itself to move forward successfully? So I really hope you've enjoyed this edition of Impactful Teamwork, where we really dived into energy, organizational photosynthesis, and how you as a leader really need to consciously think about how can you harness the energy within the organization to your best effect. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic, because I think this is something that's not spoken about enough, but is so important and can make a massive difference to your organizational success. So until next week, I hope you have an amazing time. Bye-bye.